It was a cold, foggy Halloween night in the small town of Blackwood. The streets were empty, save for the occasional rustle of fallen leaves and the distant howl of the wind. The town's annual Halloween party was in full swing at the old Blackwood Manor, a grand but eerie mansion on the edge of the forest. The guests, dressed in elaborate costumes, laughed and danced, unaware that a sinister plot was unfolding in their midst. Detective Samuel Graves, a tall, sharp-eyed man in his late 40s, had been invited to the party as a guest of honor. Known for his brilliant mind and unshakable calm, Graves had solved some of the most baffling cases in the region. But tonight, he wasn't there to work, or so he thought. As the clock struck midnight, the lights in the mansion flickered and went out. A scream pierced the air, followed by panicked whispers. When the lights came back on, the guests gasped in horror. Lying on the floor, in the center of the room, was the lifeless body of Mr. Edgar Crowley, the wealthy host of the party. A knife protruded from his chest, and his face was frozen in a mask of terror. The room erupted into chaos. Guests backed away, some crying, others shouting. Detective Graves quickly took charge, his sharp eyes scanning the scene. He noticed a few key details. The knife was a prop from the costume of a medieval knight. The lights had been cut from the main switch in the basement, and a trail of muddy footprints led from the back door to the body. Graves called for silence and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that Mr. Crowley has been murdered. No one is to leave this mansion until I've had a chance to investigate. Please remain calm and stay in the main hall." The guests reluctantly obeyed, their festive mood replaced by fear and suspicion. Graves began his investigation by examining the body. He noted that the knife had been plunged with precision, suggesting the killer had some knowledge of anatomy. He also found a small, crumpled piece of paper in Crowley's hand. It read, "The past always comes back to haunt you." Graves turned his attention to the guests. There were 5 key suspects. Mrs. Evelyn Crowley, Edgar's wife, who had been seen arguing with him earlier in the evening. Victor Blackwood, Edgar's estranged nephew, who stood to inherit the family fortune. Dr. Eliza Hart, the town's physician, who had been unusually nervous all evening. Mr. Henry Blake, a mysterious businessman who had arrived in town just days ago. Miss Clara Finch, Edgar's secretary, who had been overheard threatening him earlier that day. Graves questioned each suspect, carefully observing their reactions. Mrs. Crowley claimed she had been in the kitchen during the murder, but Graves noticed a faint smear of mud on her shoes. Victor Blackwood insisted he had been in the library, but his alibi was shaky. Dr. Hart admitted to being in the basement to check the fuse box, but she seemed overly defensive. Mr. Blake claimed he had been outside smoking, but his hands were trembling. Miss Finch said she had been in the bathroom, but her costume was missing a piece of fabric that matched the trail of muddy footprints. As Graves pieced together the clues, he realized the killer had planned the murder meticulously. The muddy footprints, the note, and the knife all pointed to someone with a deep grudge against Edgar Crowley. Graves gathered everyone in the main hall and revealed his findings. "The killer is among us," he declared. "The muddy footprints, the note, and the precision of the stab wound all point to someone who knew Edgar Crowley well and had a motive to see him dead." He turned to Miss Clara Finch. "You claimed to be in the bathroom, but a piece of your costume was found near the body. You also had access to Edgar's schedule and knew about his past misdeeds. You killed him because he ruined your father's business years ago, didn't you?" Clara's face turned pale. She tried to deny it, but the evidence was overwhelming. Finally, she broke down and confessed. "Yes, I killed him. He destroyed my family, and I wanted him to pay." The guests gasped as Clara was taken away by the local police. Detective Graves sighed, his work done. As he left the mansion, he couldn't help but think about the note in Edgar's hand. The past always comes back to haunt you, and on that dark Halloween night, it certainly had.